What's going on, everybody? You see a Jaguar back here with JenJag.com, and before I get into this video, I know a lot of you guys have already been hitting me up about the Marcel Daria situation. Apparently, he got accused of sexual assault and transmitting STDs to an unconscious woman. My thoughts on it are that the allegations are terrible, obviously, but he is innocent until proven guilty. I know a couple months ago we saw the whole Reuben Foster situation where a woman accused him just to kind of get a money grab. So until more evidence comes out and until something's proven in court, I'm not going to rush into conclusions on that and judge a person's character when before something ever happens. So yeah, with that said, I put out my most recent poll on Twitter on what position group you guys wanted me to preview next, and the tight end position won. So in this video, we're going to go ahead and discuss. So let's get it.
Last name ever, first name greatest, like a sprained ankle, boy, ain't nothing to play with.
Now, the tight end position really isn't a position that the Jaguars have really featured all that much over their franchise's history. If you look around the NFL, you have guys like, the Patriots with Gronkowski, the Chiefs with Kelsey, the Eagles with Zach Ertz. The Jaguars in their franchise's history has never had any tight ends that have really been at that caliber. Now, a couple years ago, they tried to swing for the fences and bring in a guy like Julius Thomas for a big money price tag that they thought could lead into and be one of the top 5 tight ends in the NFL, but obviously that was a huge bust. Now, the best 2 tight ends in the Jaguars' history was Kyle Brady in the early 2000s and recently departed Marcedes Lewis. And while we're on the conversation of Marcedes Lewis, this is his first year not on the Jaguars in 11 years. So the tight end room looks totally different. They lost a huge leader in the group and they lost a very, very good blocker. Marcedes Lewis was the leading tight end in receiving yards last season and touchdowns, as he had more receiving yards than Ben Koyak and James O'Shaughnessy combined. Now, the Jaguars only had 3 tight ends on the roster last year with Marcedes Lewis, James O'Shaughnessy, and Ben Koyak, but now there looks to probably be 4 guys that are going to make the roster. Austin Jenkins, the free agent that we signed over from the Jets, Niles Paul, the free agent that we signed over from the Washington Redskins, and also our 2 returners between Ben Koyak and James O'Shaughnessy. Now, Austin Jenkins is a guy that I made a video about a couple weeks ago, and I think he is going to be huge for the Jaguars. I made a video about him just basically saying that I am extremely high on ASJ.
I wish I was high on partners.
Now, Austin Jenkins signed a 2-year, $10.5 million deal with the Jaguars, and he was drafted in the second round of the 2014 NFL draft, but he kind of struggled with alcoholism his first couple years. Then the Jets picked him up last year, and he did pretty well with the Jets, and he got 50 receptions for the team before they kind of let him walk in free agency. Now, I think ASJ only has his best years ahead of him, and through OTAs, him and Bortles were showing good chemistry. Jaguars really didn't have a big wide receiver threat like him, or tight end threat, I should say. He's a lot more athletic than Marcedes Lewis. Marcedes Lewis had 5 touchdown grabs. However, his touchdowns were basically schemed open, and Bortles is extremely efficient in the red zone, throwing for 18 touchdowns and 0 interceptions last year. And being able to add a threat like Austin Jenkins, I think it's a huge grab for the Jaguars. And I think it's also going to be huge for Austin Jenkins to be able to open up the middle of the field. You're going to have actual linebackers keying in on ASJ and actually seeing him as a threat, so that should hopefully free up the box a little bit for Leonard Fournette, because last year there really was no threat that was lining up, on either side of the offensive tackles that defenses really had to key in on. Now, Jaguars signed Niles Paul to a 2-year, $4.5 million deal, and I think this deal is more just of a special teams kind of move. He was a special teams captain for the Redskins, and the Dave Caldwell in a press conference when they first signed him kind of alluded to the fact that they could be playing him at tight end fullback, like a little bit of like receiver. And when you kind of do that, you would, if you really expect to make a big impact out of a player, you're going to stick him at one position and let him match that position. And you don't really move him all around. So I just feel like when he kind of said that, it's almost going to be like a filler in there if a player gets injured, or if they really are in a bind and need to use him. So I expect him to make big impacts on special teams. You know, Jaguars weren't very good at like special teams last year, so I think this is what Niles Paul's responsibility is going to be. Now, a couple returning players for the Jaguars is Ben Koyack and James O'Shaughnessy. Now, if you were to kind of put these guys in the competition and say, you know, if the Jaguars are only going to keep one of these guys, who is it going to be? I would probably say Ben Koyack, just because Ben Koyack, while he didn't do as much on special teams as James O'Shaughnessy, he was pretty good in the run blocking game, and that's the Jaguars' bread and butter on offense. You know, they want to be a physical team that can run the ball when they really want to run the ball. And with the departure of Mercedes Lewis, it's going to leave kind of a hole at that blocking tight end position. Austin Jenkins, while he is trying to learn how to run block, it hasn't really been his specialty. And Ben Koyack, I think, is going to be in there and be able to fill in there for like run blocking kind of stuff. Now, James O'Shaughnessy, he was more so used in the pass game. He had more receptions and more receiving yards than Ben Koyack, but he was also used in special teams big time. But now you can almost substitute Niles Paul in there for James O'Shaughnessy and their production on special teams. So it'll be kind of interesting to see where the Jaguars go with this. Now, are they going to keep 3 tight ends like last year? Are they going to keep 4 tight ends? It'll be kind of an interesting thing to see what they do decide to do with their roster. Now, one sleeper thing I have going on for the Jaguars at tight end is maybe a guy like wide receiver Allen Lazard, a 6'5 receiver that was undrafted in 2018 draft. Maybe he could slide in there and kind of transition to a tight end spot, just because I feel like the receiver room is extremely crowded, and I really don't think that he has any shot of making it with 5 receiver spots basically locked down. And that 6 wide receiver spot is probably going to be either Rashad Green or Jadon Mickens, whoever wins that punt return job. But, you know, a couple years ago in 2015, we drafted Neil Sterling in the 7th round of that draft, the same round that we drafted Ben Koyack, and they actually transitioned him over to the tight end spot. And now Neil Sterling is over on the Jets right now. So could they potentially do that with a guy like Allen Lazard? Could he be like a roster sleeper for tight end position? You know, you never know. Now, my overall grade for the tight end position, I would give it a solid C. Now, the Jaguars were looking to draft a tight end in the 2018 NFL draft. However, the value really never fit the spot that they were drafting, and they'd never really reached for one. So, really, you brought in Austin Jenkins on a decent-sized deal. You brought in Niles Paul as kind of a special teams guy. I think a lot of it's going to be on Austin Jenkins to be a great tight end for this team, and I really do think he will be. Obviously, like I said, I'm pretty high on him, so yeah, I give this tight end position a solid C. And thank you guys for watching this video. More videos to come, of course, and this is UC at Jaguar with JenJag.com, and we out.